Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mumey and Megan Saia from Celebration Bar Review.
Hey everybody, welcome. We are glad to have you with us. Megan will be joining me in just a minute here, and we hope you're all doing well. Everybody is healthy and safe, and we have a few things to cover today. We've got some breaking news out of Texas. We have some results out of California. We have some updates generally to talk about, and then we've got your questions. Megan, if you're there, why don't you jump in? Hey, look at that. I love the power. I just say it here. It's I Dream of Genie, which is way before your time. Is that more like, is that more like WandaVision?
That comes out soon, I think. I don't think it's out yet, but yes. Yeah, I think that's going to be maybe it'll be a more modern reference.
Very, very cool cultural reference from an old person. Anyway, hi and welcome. We're glad to have you with us. I think we probably should just kick it off and talk about the news around the bar exam world, because it was a pretty big week, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Let's talk about what's been happening in some of the different jurisdictions this week. The big news, obviously, is California released their results. The good news is that they released them early, which was great. So they did announced that they would be releasing them early, but fantastic. We were expecting more of a later in January release date. So we do have those results. The pass rate in California, as expected, went up significantly to 60.7% overall. That's, of course, in large part due to changing the pass score. And so a lot more people who would have failed previous exams were able to pass the California bar on this try, which is really great news. And if we look at the first time only pass rate, that was 74%. And for repeaters, it was 43%. So really different numbers than what we're used to seeing in California.
Yeah, almost double the repeat taker pass rate. So that's really good news. And that's what we predicted would happen. We thought that it would be a good test for people to take if they could get into it. I feel vindicated by that. I'm certainly excited for those who passed. We're going to try and do some interviews with passing successful California bar takers that we had. So that's always exciting when we can do that. What did you think about the number of people that took the exam?
It was interesting because significantly smaller number actually took it than had registered for it. So again, not surprising. There was a large drop off in the amount of people who actually showed up and took both days of the exam, as opposed to those who had signed up for it. So they ended up with, I believe it was somewhere in the 8,000s who took the online exam in California.
Yeah, and they had 12,000 plus registrations, didn't they, at one point?
Yeah.
And did we get any word about the people that were flagged for potential violations using the artificial intelligence in the proctoring system?
Yeah, so that seems to have died out. And so I think it's good news. It's annoying for people who had to deal with it, but it doesn't seem to be a large number of people who were disqualified. So I think a whole lot of people, about a third of the applicants who took the online test in California got flagged for violations, which is insanity that clearly a third of people were not cheating. So then they had to prove that they were not actually cheating on the exam. They had to go through a different process, but it doesn't seem to be a large number of people coming out of that who actually were disqualified. So that's good news, but obviously very stressful for the people who a week before the results were released, we're getting emails saying, oh, you've been flagged because your microphone, it suddenly got very quiet. And so we were concerned that you turned off your mic, or you were looking away from the camera for too long, or things like that. But of course, once an actual human looked at the videos, it was pretty apparent that most people, if not all of them, I haven't heard of an instance of cheating, but that they were not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, which is good, because I think this whole question of the AI and is it racially biased? Is it super sensitive? We didn't get these kind of numbers of people being flagged anywhere else in the country, did we?
No, certainly not a third of applicants. Yeah, very interesting. So I don't know what it was, if California used different AI software. They obviously used the same testing software, but
Yeah.
not sure. Or if they were just more sensitive, or it could be also maybe they didn't have real person view it before they sent out the notices of violations, of potential violations, excuse me.
Right.
So that certainly would help if you had a person on the front end rather than on the back end, making sure that, hey, before we alarm people unnecessarily, let's look and use common sense and figure out if we think this is actually a questionable case, or if this is very clearly that somebody was just closing their eyes to think, or whatever the violation might have been.
Yeah, it's really an interesting phenomenon. And as I've talked to people who were in the October exams around the country, including California, I think for the most part, the AI and the online format worked pretty well. There were individual problems, but it seems like the examiners and the exam software companies did a pretty good job of being responsive at the day of the exam. They weren't rigid on when you had to start, if you were stuck getting started. And so there's some good things there. And so I think that is a positive, because we're going to see more and more online testing. We're going to talk about this in a minute. We've seen another change. But I think in general, knowing that the online testing worked okay, which was our great fear. California was the stress test. Can you put thousands of people in on a single day and make it work? And the answer seems to be, yeah, you could. So that part is good, and I'm pleased about that. I wanted to share very quickly, they gave us what they called a percentile table, which I thought was interesting. We don't normally see these, but they told us where the percentiles were in terms of scoring. And as I've been doing videos for people that were not successful, essentially to get to a 1390, which was the passing score, you needed to be in the 40th percentile of all bar takers. So again, they had 60% of the people passing, so 60th percentile and then 40 percentile down. I thought that was a useful tool to help people see where they stood and how close they were. One of the things that is so frustrating about California is they multiply all the scores by 10. So you're like, what does that number really mean? If we took the relative scores of all of the UBE jurisdictions and Florida and Georgia, what we'd have is that New York would say on this 200-point scale, 133 is passing. Florida would say 136 is passing. Georgia and Texas would say 135 is passing. But California would say 139 is passing. So people get a 134 or a 135, but we say 1340 or 1350, and they say, oh my God, I failed by 40 or 50 points. That's really not the case. They failed by 4 points or 3 points. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that these are artificially, they've just taken it out to another decimal point. And so it's really not that you failed by 40 points, you failed by 4. And so I say that because I know there were some people that came very close and didn't make it. But when you're within 3 or 4 points, if you'd gotten a 130 and you needed a 133, we wouldn't be saying, oh my God, you're a disaster. Just something to keep in mind. Scoring is always interesting, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. And it sometimes feels, especially with this last test, felt a little bit more arbitrary because, of course, we didn't have the 200 question NCBE that we normally have that helps guarantee, or guarantees maybe too strong of a word, but helps push it more into the realm of an objective exam.
Yeah, and so they ended up scaling the multi-state the same as every other state did. It looks like they just doubled the number of questions you got correct in those 100 questions and then created a scale based on prior multi-states, which I think is really arbitrary. I think the word maybe that Megan was searching for, is it reliable? And I'm not sure that it was terribly reliable. On the other hand, when you reduce the pass score down to the 139 or 1390, I think then you get closer to a realistic number, and getting 60% of first-time takers and 40% of repeat bar takers through is a huge improvement, I think, overall for the examiners. The other part of this that I think that is worth talking about here is that if you took the October bar exam, and you were not successful, if there's any way that you can sit for the February test, you should do it. Because as you and I, Megan, are looking at it, we were just talking before we went live, there's going to be a massive bubble in July, isn't there?
Yeah, we are seeing so many people delay and defer to the July exam. particularly in California, where there's so little time between people finding out that they had a failing score for this last exam and then when the February exam is. But goodness, everywhere I look, I'm seeing people saying, gosh, I don't know. Our students, other students saying, I don't know. Can I get ready in time? I'm not sure. This is just too stressful. I think I'll just wait till July. So what's going to happen, which, Jackson, I know we've been talking about this for almost a year now, which is so crazy that we're coming up on that, but that there will at some point potentially be a tidal wave. So all the people who pushed back from the October exams and decided, I'll just wait till 2021 when things have calmed down. Now the February exam, a lot of people are pushing back from that saying, gosh, maybe I don't want to take it online, or things are just so really stressful, or I don't have enough time to study. So they're pushing to July. At some point that wave is going to crash on the shore. And the longer we go, the bigger that wave is going to get. And so right now we're looking at it crashing potentially on the July exam in 2021. I don't know what that looks like, because you're adding to that, of course, all the people who are graduating law school will be taking that July exam. So yes, we just really recommend, if you can take the February exam, take it. There's going to be far fewer people than the July exam.
Yeah, absolutely. Do what you can do. And we're here to backstop you. Okay. Yeah. What else we got?
Well, we have a couple of questions or comments in the chat box that I want to bring up now. So Maria asked, what issues do you anticipate can be caused by the larger number of students for July 2021?
That's a great question. The first thing is it's going to make the competition for passing seats, I think, more difficult. You're going to have a lot of repeat bar takers in there because you get this overflow of people from October, regardless of what jurisdiction you're in. You're just going to get a big group of people. And so I think that's going to make it really hyper competitive. Now, that isn't a reason not to take the July exam. It just means you have to recognize you're going to have to be on your A game. So I think that's one issue. I think a second issue is at this moment, we don't know how that test is going to be given. We presume online, because as we're going to talk about, the tests seem to be moving online one way or the other. So I think you're not going to feel it in the same way that you would if you were sitting in a in-person testing center, but there are going to be a lot of people taking the exam. That can also ultimately lead to delays in reporting results. And so I think there's some question about what that will look like. Ultimately, I don't know that you prepare any differently because there's more people taking the exam, but I think that when you look at it from the 30,000 foot view, which is where we tend to be, we see this big bubble, a lot of demand. And frankly, we're trying to make sure that we can handle the demand here for the services that people need.
Yeah. And another student commented that they had called the California bar examiners and they had been told that July will probably be online as well, which is definitely what we're thinking and planning on. Yeah, that's just where the test is going. Certainly in California, they've been wanting to do it online for a while anyway. And then they have, as California has said, they've had more practice with this than anyone else because they give the first year examination. Yeah. So they gave that online, then they gave the October exam online, then they did another California first year online. So this is very much becoming just the norm for California. And in California, we have so many testing sites. It's such a huge operation. It's not like Florida where they generally in most years have one place where everything happens. It is just a logistical nightmare. And I think that for the California examiners, the ability to do it online is really an upgrade on the whole for them for how they give the test. Yeah. So let's also talk in California about some big news that came out this week. There is a possibility that they will retroactively apply the lower pass score to anyone who got a 1390 or higher on a bar exam from July 2015 through February 2020. This is not set in stone yet, but it was voted on and has moved to the California Supreme Court. So the California Bar task, or it's not a task force, but this group, they decided that they were okay with this. And so then they have sent it on to the California Supreme Court with instructions that they would like to see the California Supreme Court go ahead and okay this plan. So if that happens, we will let people know immediately. We'll post it in Facebook. We'll talk about it on the webinar. Either way, we're not anticipating finding out this week. I've heard some rumblings and rumors that it could happen by the end of January. But if you are studying for the February bar in California, and you scored a 1390 or higher on a previous exam, July 2015 through February 2020, please keep studying, because you will not regret that. If it turns out that you find out in a few weeks you don't have to take the exam and you've already passed, you will not be mad that you studied. Like, I promise you're not going to be mad that you studied. You're going to be so thrilled and relieved that you are a member of the bar. If you, however, if they end up not making the decision before February or deciding that they will not retroactively apply the score, then you will be very upset that you didn't study during that time. Okay. So I'm begging you. I know it's really hard, and it's probably really hard to stay motivated knowing that there's this possibility of you might not have to take the test dangling out there, but please keep studying. And obviously we're hoping and praying that this is good news and they retroactively apply it and you don't have to sit for the February exam.
Yeah, it would be fabulous news. And I'm thinking of people that I know were in that range. And I want to just echo what Megan said. Don't stop studying. This is politics. Things can change. Things do change. We don't know what will ultimately be decided here, but we will let you know. But keep our fingers crossed. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And just so people know, the reason why they're thinking that potentially is because in California, your score is good for a cert for 5 years. And so it's the wait, if your score is good for 5 years and you're saying that a 1390 is okay now, then shouldn't we just say it's fine if you got a 1390 5 years ago? So that's why.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to Texas.
Okay.
The big news out of Texas is that the bar exam is moving online for February for Texas. Just a couple days ago, they announced they had moved up to 4 exam sites. They would no longer have any of those. If you're taking the bar in Texas, hopefully you should have gotten an email from them saying that you're now taking it online, and they will be telling applicants the software that you need to download and the procedures for that. Nothing changes about the test. The length is the same. The format is the same. Of course, it's UBE exam this time around. So everything about that will be the same. The dates are the same. It's just going to be done on your own computer at home rather than going to a test site.
Yeah, I think that's great news. I think that politics are changing, obviously. And I think that the reality of COVID is now beginning to penetrate some places that have pretended that it didn't exist. And that certainly includes some bar exams and some bar exam administration. So Texas was the biggest state, I think, that was going to do an in-person exam that we had seen on the list. So that's a big change and something that I think is good. I know that some of you were anxious to do an in-person exam. And I would say if you're still looking for in-person, remember Texas was UBE. So there are other UBE states. I know, Megan, you're going to go down and do a list of all the online jurisdictions here in a minute. But there are some UBE states that are going to do in-person exams. And don't know that you can make the switch this late in the game for February, maybe. But I think probably if you were in Texas, just get yourself ready for an online test. And that means, in practical terms, writing your essays online, writing your performance tests online, taking the multiple choice questions online. All of that is there, along with some fairly extensive videos that we've made about that online process for every part of the exam. So make sure you're checking those out.
Yes. On that note, there's a question in the chat box that we can address now. How does highlighting work on the online performance test?
It depends on the jurisdiction, and I know Miles is asking about California, and I don't know off the top of my head if California was one of the states that allowed you to highlight on the screen. Do you know that, Megan? Do you know what the...
I want to say yes, but yeah, and California let you have scratch paper too for the performance test.
They did, but here's the real answer. Go to the bar examiner's website, look at the rules, because the rules changed several times leading up to the exam. I don't know what they're going to do in July. I'm not sure that they know what they're going to do in July. I would practice as though it's all online and you can't highlight it for a performance test. That's our
Nancy says yes to highlight in California.
Okay.
So again, that was for the February exam. So hopefully stays the same.
But in all these states that give performance tests, so all the UBE, Georgia, and California, make sure that you go to your state bar examiner website and check to see what their rules are. They did change a lot in October frequently. And so you need to be up to date on that and then practice accordingly. So if you get scratch paper in your jurisdiction, and not every state did that, then you can use scratch paper. But if you don't, obviously you don't want to do that. Again, there is a video in your course materials about doing performance tests online, whether you're in California, Georgia, or UBE. So make sure you check that out. I think it's pretty useful, and then you can start practicing. And if you're taking the exam in July, I'm guessing this will change 2 or 3 more times before we get there. So I wouldn't get too locked in. I don't know. What do you think? You think we're in a straight shot right to July? I don't know.
No.
We did get the essays and performance tests from the National Conference of Bar Examiners this last week, and we'll be putting those into our materials online in the coming week or two. One of the things that we surmised in this process was that there was some repetition, that some of the questions were repeated from exam to exam. So we asked the NCBE when we got the questions, we're like, because they were vague about it, and we're like, what exams did these fit into? So what was their answer, Megan? What did they come back to us with?
So they confirmed what we had heard rumors of and we're trying to track, which is that they use the same MEE questions, so the essays, for the September 30th, October 1st exam as they did for the October 5th and 6th. So they had one set of questions in the earlier September date, and then they used another set and they used it twice. Jackson, has that ever happened before, that they use the same questions for more than one test? Yeah, this was big. I think not surprising, given that we talked about it when they were making all these announcements. How are they going to develop questions? They spend so long developing these questions and figuring out what they want to test. How are they going to come up with this many questions for this many exams in such a short amount of time? And the answer in part was that they reused some of them.
Yeah, reusing essay questions is unheard of for a bar exam. And it was weird because in some ways we were sworn to secrecy. We couldn't talk about it. We presumed that's what they were doing, but we were really constrained about being able to say that, and out of ethical consideration, we just couldn't say to the October 5th and 6th students, hey, it's the same essays that we think we just saw on September 30th, but that's exactly what they did. So what a strange year on so many levels, but in the bar exam, unprecedented is the word we just kept using week after week. So I'd really like to think we're past all of that now, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Talking about unprecedented and changes, a question that I think we'll just touch on briefly here, but you and I are going to be talking about it significantly longer in a different format. Modesto asks, I heard that the NCBR is entertaining changing the bar exam format.
Yeah. There's something called the Testing Task Force that was put into place a couple of years ago, and they did a whole lot of study and surveys and talked to a lot of stakeholders. And then they came back with recommendations, and these recommendations are actually from the national conference. They're not an outside group banging on the door. And the upshot was the test is going to change. That's, whether you like it or not, the test is going to change. But the important point is the test isn't going to change for 4 or 5 years. So I'm going to echo something that Megan said earlier to the California students. Do not take your foot off the accelerator. Do not stop and say, oh, the test is going to be different, and so I shouldn't be studying this way, or I shouldn't be prepared for I saw a headline that said, no more MBE. That's not true, not now, down the road maybe, but not now. And so you need to keep studying. We're multiple years into a process. Megan and I are actually recording a separate podcast video to talk just about the Testing Task Force and its conclusions and what we think it's going to mean. We'll put that out for you shortly. We thought it deserved its own separate discussion, but we also didn't want to overemphasize it right now because it has no impact, zero, on any bar exam in 2021 or 2022, probably even 2023. Maybe your children's children will be impacted, not you. Whether you like it or not, that's the reality, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Eyes on the prize. Don't get distracted by the shiny object that's 5 years down the road, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. All right. So there's been a lot of movement. So just in case, if you're unsure of whether your jurisdiction is going to be online or not, or if maybe they've moved, you thought you were sure, but they've changed their minds and you didn't realize, I'm just going to go through real quick. This is the list of everyone who's doing the remote exam. So the online exam: Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, DC, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, which does a 3-day exam, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, the Virgin Islands, Washington State, and Wisconsin. So that is a lot of states. It's certainly most of the states, but just I want to clarify for people because I do know there's been a lot of movement. Make sure and you're studying for the type of exam that you're actually going to be sitting for in February.
Yeah. Okay, so now the question about Hawaii uses the multi-state essay exams, but it is not a UBE jurisdiction. Now, here's the distinction. You would still study for it essentially the same way you study for the UBE, but you can't transfer your score around. I think Hawaii has reciprocity with California, if memory serves, but that's about it. Different scoring, different score portability, but you still would study the multi-state essays and the multi-state performance test and the multi-state bar exam. Those are all components of the Hawaii test. And then I think, as some states do, they have some state-specific information that they test. I know one of the states that has been in that kind of same position for a long time was Indiana, and they switched to the UBE coming up this year. So we're, in spite of all the craziness in 2020, we still saw some significant movement of states to the UBE. So I think the bar examiners, the national conference, are really trying to continue to coalesce that big group. I'm interested to see what Georgia eventually does. I think Georgia is one of those states that you feel like should be a UBE state, but hasn't been up till now. I think Florida and California, not going to happen. I just think they're just way too independent and they don't want it. But I would have thought that about New York if you'd asked me 5 years ago. Who knows? Maybe pigs can fly. I'm not sure, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. Similarly, we had someone ask if they're checking on Massachusetts. I realize they take the UBE, so just confirming, does CBR cover that state?
Yeah, we cover every state that does the uniform bar exam. So that's 30 plus. I don't even know what that number is right now. And it's the same exam everywhere. I know some of you are like, why does he keep saying that? Because so many people don't get it. It doesn't matter where you take the test. It's the same test in Texas or Massachusetts or New York or Colorado or New Mexico or the District of Columbia. It does not matter. It's the same test. Your score then can be applied into any jurisdiction that will accept your score, and you can go through the character and fitness in that other jurisdiction and be admitted. And so every exam we have people that get these ginormous scores and suddenly find themselves able to wave into 15, 20, 30 states if they wanted to, or apply to them to get their scores in. So UBE is it's a great thing for bar takers, really. And yeah, we've got it all covered.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to some study strategy questions. The big one that I've seen a few times, different variations of, is I don't take it personally. I know that this is the fear of everyone. How do we know that FLA works? Don't I have to do IRAC in order to pass the bar? Aren't the bar examiners, don't they have a little sheet that says, did the student do IRAC? 20 points.
Yeah, I hear it all the time. And I understand that it feels like IRAC should be the way to go because that's what everybody does. It's what the big box bar reviews do. If it were the gold standard, everyone would pass. Obviously, they don't. The majority of people that take the bar still fail across the country. But I thought it was interesting to see, we've been looking at California this week in detail, and California posts their criteria for grading. And I thought it'd be interesting to see what the California bar examiners said about essay questions, just for that very point. So I want to take a minute here and just quote to you from what they said. Here's what the bar examiners say. Essay questions are designed to test legal analysis under a given fact situation. Answers are expected to demonstrate the applicant's ability to analyze the facts in the question, to tell the difference between material facts and immaterial facts, and to discern the points of law and fact upon which the case turns. The answer must show knowledge and understanding of the pertinent principles and theories of law, qualifications and limitations, and relationships to each other. The answer should evidence the applicant's ability to apply the law to the given facts. Does that sound familiar? And to reason in a logical, lawyer-like manner from the premise adopted to a sound conclusion. An applicant, and get this, should not merely show that they remember legal principles, but demonstrate their proficiency in using and applying them. That's the entirety of what the bar examiners say. I did not hear anything that said spot issues, memorize rules, recite elements, not a word. And I got to tell you, if the Cal Bar, who's the toughest in the world, says that is the criteria for every jurisdiction in the country, you and I, Megan, see lots of comments from people who don't want to go on video and don't want to go public, and we recognize and respect that privacy. But we get comments all the time from people who say, my God, my scores went up by so much. And my writing scores went up when I switched to the FLA writing system, and IRAC didn't work. And now I'm seeing these big jumps in scores. And of course, we do the videos with those people that are gracious enough to do interviews with us, and it's a consistent theme. I think the most frustrating thing to me is to watch the conversations when people suddenly think, oh my God, it doesn't work, and they feel like they've got to jump ship. Don't do that. If you go back for 25 years, our track record is better than anybody's. This writing style is rock solid, and it works because it's based on what the examiners say they're looking for, not what we think they should be doing. So, do you want to add to that? Because I know you're the writing guru, but I feel like should we say that?
No, that's great. I always talk too about in my writing conferences what the NCBE, right, who creates the MEE questions, so the multi-state essay questions, what they say, and they say the same thing that California does. They're looking for legal reasoning and analysis, and that's really what it comes down to. And so is FLA the only way to write a passing essay? Of course not. Of course not the only way. But is IRAC the only way to write it? Of course it's not. And obviously standing here, someone who passed the California bar first time using FLA, didn't do IRAC, did IRAC in law school, did not do IRAC on the bar exam, passed California. I think that it's hard and scary. And so that's why I have a lot of sympathy and understand. It's hard and scary to do something new and to do something different. So if everyone is going to the right, you feel like, what if I have to stick with the crowd? And the problem is, for people who have tried that and failed, you ended up at the back of that crowd. And so while that method may work fantastically for those people who are at the front, there's people who are getting left behind. And so if that's you and you tried IRAC and you've tried it, sometimes, gosh, we have students who come to us after trying IRAC over and over again and failing. Try something different. Go a different direction. I know it feels scary to think, but am I still going to end up in the same spot? Yeah, you are. And you're not going to be beating your head against a wall trying to do something that just doesn't click with you for whatever reason or doesn't make intuitive sense. So yeah, I totally don't mind talking about the why. I talk about the why always in the conferences. That's how I start personal writing workshop conferences, because I do believe deeply, like, I want you to be bought into it and trust me that, again, like you said, Jackson, we're not making this up, or we're not just, oh, let's be contrarian. This is really hey, this is what the examiners tell us they're looking for. Maybe there's a better way to give them what they're looking for than the way that, we're taught in law school to do it for the purposes of an exam where you have, maybe for most of you, have 30 minutes to write it, right? I pretty much can guarantee you that none of you took law school exams where you're supposed to write IRAC in 30 minutes. Like, it just doesn't happen. That's not a thing that happens. The bar exam is different than a law school test. Let's change it. Let's try and take a risk.
Yeah, and not to let too much out of the bag too early, but the testing task force is clearly moving towards that model. Issue spotting IRAC is going to be consigned to the dustbin of history here in a few years. It'll be a dead letter, I think. So,
let's see. We've got a question about the testing task force. So I just want to reiterate, they said, how long should we continue to study on the same study route? Keep studying. It's 4 to 5. They said years. 4 to 5 years before it gets implemented. And that may be, we never know. It could end up being 5 to 6. Yes, please. If you're studying for the bar now, God willing, this has nothing to do with you, and you will be well moved on with your life by the time it changes. Great. If I wanted to do one over the other, since we only have 43 days left, which would you recommend, photo reading or bar maps?
I thought this was an interesting question because you and I would answer it differently. I know you would. I would say photo reading and you would say bar maps, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll give my case for photo reading. You can give the case for bar maps and mind maps. How's that?
Yeah.
I think photo reading is an absolute game changer. I think we're now up to 14 years or so that we've been teaching it. It just makes a huge difference for people when they trust it and use it. There is enough time to learn photo reading 40 some days out from the bar exam. It's absolutely manageable. I've had people pick up photo reading 21 days before the test and do just fine with it. I think that it gives you greater confidence. I think it gives you greater retention of material. I think it's just overall a life-changing skill and something you continue to use. So I love it. And to be clear, Megan and I are not saying don't do one versus the other, but I know we have a preference. So if you could only do one, I would photo read. But now I think it's important that we make the case for why you should do bar maps.
Yeah, I love mind maps. I think they are, if you're looking at it and you're saying I'm 40 something days out from the exam, presumably you have been studying, you've read through the outlines, you've listened to the lectures, you've done all that. And now it's really a matter of synthesizing the information and making sure, where are my blind spots? What don't I understand? What do I know? Just like we talked about with the California examiners saying, hey, it's not adequate to just identify the legal principle. You need to show your work and explain how it applies. That's where, in my mind, the mind maps come in so nicely, is that it's maybe you feel like, gosh, I know this crime and I know the required elements, but I don't really understand it, or I don't understand how it fits in or how it happens and functions in the real world. That's where the mind maps, I think, are incredibly helpful. You connect things together, connections between the different pieces. You get a broader understanding of the subject. So yeah, I just 100% think it's so helpful if you're having trouble retaining information or understanding how it's all plays out in the real world. I think mind maps are a great way for you to reorganize the way that you think about things so that you can start to see that sort of application piece.
Yeah, and in the bar maps product, you're getting really the best of both worlds. You're getting this very specific opportunity to dig in, as you're saying, Megan, and you say, what don't I know? I don't want to do the whole lecture. I don't want to do 6 hours or 8 hours of lecture. So you find the parts of the lecture that you need. That's the interactive video. Then you've got the mind maps already built for you that start you off in that process and get you really working through the mind mapping process. And you have the ability to take that 6-hour lecture and listen to it in a compressed version that will take you about 3 hours. And so you're just getting it all bundled up in one. The answer is you should do both. But if you're only going to do one, there's the two views about what you should do. And in case some of you think that we're always in lockstep, it's not true. we do disagree occasionally. But it was a great question. So thanks for that. Thanks for the you almost persuaded me, Megan. I almost so close. So very close. But there you go.
But seriously, everyone should be doing mind maps, no matter where you are in it. Do the mind maps.
Yeah.
All right. So that's what we have for today. Jackson, any thoughts as to wrap us up with, we're just over, 40 days to the exam. I know you've said people are starting to drop like flies and telling you, I don't know, maybe I just won't take February. Maybe I'll just wait till July. Any final thoughts for kind of where people are this far out from the exam?
Yeah, I was trying to think of it in the context of the bigger world picture that we're in. And I don't know about anybody else. I'm fatigued. This is just hard. I think if you are concerned, if you're involved in the bigger picture, if you're an American, I think you just got to be concerned right now. And I know it's not like you're just ignoring Christmas or you're ignoring football, this is bigger than that. And I know next Wednesday we've got inauguration. And then I thought, no, I think there's a time for everything. I think it's important that we take that time and just honor the fact that we are still a nation of laws and a rule of law. And I hope everybody will bear with me. I'm not telling you to go watch the inauguration. I think it's okay to acknowledge that there are bigger realities and that your part of that reality is certainly to become a lawyer, to defend the rule of law in this nation, to defend what we know, what we've been trained as lawyers to do, which is to resolve our problems in the law and not through non-legal methods. And I know some of you may think that's a political statement. I'll live with that. But I believe that right now our task is to get people into the bar who believe that the rule of law matters. And so I'd like to take next Wednesday and just take that day to reflect a little bit on that. But I guess my point really about all of this is find a time and a place for everything. In every day, you can put in some bar study time, but you may need to have some time to talk to your kids about what's going on, or to be involved in your community, or to engage in the things that are happening around you. Certainly, COVID didn't go away. It's still very real, and I continue to get messages from people who are being affected by COVID, either personally or in their families. And our hearts go out to you. It is such a big deal. Just say, side note, Sarah and I got our first vaccine shots. It feels like we won the lottery. So few people are getting them, and we got them, and we're very grateful for that. And there's just a lot of things that I think are happening right now, and it's okay to feel a little unsettled or a lot unsettled. But when you're doing your bar study, even if it's for an hour, be focused on that. When you're done with that, put it aside and then focus on whatever else you're dealing with. And when you're ready to come back to the bar study, be in that moment and do that work. And that's where we're trying to be as mentors and coaches, group coaches and personal coaches, as you and I are, Megan. And I hope that shows through in the work that we're doing. We know that there are going to be these moments of great uncertainty and unsettledness for lots of reasons. And if you can hang in there and keep your head down and do your work, the reality is that there will be far fewer people sitting in the room virtually or physically with you in February, and it will be to your advantage. And so I just want to keep telling you, try your best. If you get to the end and you say, you know what, I'm just not there, I can't do it, there's no harm. You can defer with us as often as you want. We've taken all the limits off. There's no cost. There's no restriction. We've done everything to make it possible for you to do what you need to do. We just want to encourage you to get this exam in if you can, because we think it's important. And to be really honest about it, we want you in the bar a lot. You want to add anything?
Yeah, take care of yourselves, everyone, this week. Be safe, be healthy. I have a lot of friends who them or their family members are getting COVID. It's bad. It's bad in California right now. It's bad a lot of places. Take care of yourselves. Obviously, turn off the news if you need to. I know I need that reminder a lot, that it's okay. It's okay to take care of yourself too, and pause, and it'll be, all the horrible news will still be there when you come back to it. Take time for yourself and remember why you're studying for the bar. Why, whatever that is, that your purpose for wanting to be a member of the bar, keep that in front of you for sure. So yeah. Have a good week.
Yeah, everybody have a great week. It's been good to be with all of you. Take care, be healthy. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.